Welcome to Actually Contrøller, the podcast that is actually Contrøller, and we are actually in control of everything you are hearing right now. I'm so very sorry.
All right, everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of Actually Contrøller. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the two-parter from episode 2 and 3. That one ran a little bit longer.
It did run long.
So hopefully this one we can keep a little more condensed for you. But
here's to hope.
Yes, this episode, as promised, we are talking about pay to play. All the nuances of it. Is it worth it? Play that thing down, flip it and reverse it.
All right, so that was Steve. You're welcome.
AKA
Yeah,
Bions,
this is Steve.
Right? So I'm Chris. And we also call that Bions, right?
Yes, we call that Bions.
I am Bob.
And I'm Chad.
So we're going to try to make sure that you always know who's on the podcast at the beginning of every episode. So that way you can kind of know everybody's opinion going forward. So
What do you think about that, Chad?
Yeah.
What do I think about us announcing us on podcast? Oh, I think it's a great idea.
have you met Chad?
Have you met Chad?
That's my line. Back off.
Oh, no. That's everybody's line.
That's everybody's line, yeah.
All right, back on track. So pay to play or buy-ons for big shows.
Yes.
I think a lot of what's considered worth it for the band is on the band's own value of their own self. Do they feel as though they're going to get the return out of a buy-on? Is it really worth for them to do it? Is it worth pursuing?
Yes.
If you have the means, are you willing to do so and pursue what you want? And is the return going to be worth it for you?
So when it comes on to Bions, you really have to view your band as a business. And
Right.
That's something we've talked about off the podcast is what are you really going to get in return? We try not to use the word exposure, but sometimes that exposure is in networking. It's in linking up with other bands. It's finding fans that can help you in other areas. It's expanding your fan base outside of your city or your region. So what is your business getting out of it? And as a business, sometimes you have to invest up front, which in this case would be a buy-on if you have a good show. So you're going to invest funds into this buy-on that can turn around and earn you more money in merch, the networking, the fans, the bands, everything else that comes with it.
And especially if it's going to be able to push you into regions or just areas that you're not known, and being able to get you in front of that band that a lot of people are going to see now puts you in that position to where you're being seen. And when they like you, you have merch to sell. Now
I mean, that's
merchandise.
That is the traditional hope of
right.
And the model of why the buy-on ever even became really a viable option for a lot of bands, because a lot of them were looking at it as otherwise I'm never going to get at my stage of this band's career, I'm never going to get this promoter or this talent buying group or these venues to pay attention to me as a viable headliner, because I'm not going to be able to, move that unit amount for ticket sales and all that type of stuff. However, that bigger band has already, blazed that trail, and so I can get on to that tour, and it will end up garnering, theoretically, me new fans, revenue and merch and all that stuff. But the unfortunate reality is that that's the dream of a buy-on. That's what you always hope when you do the buy-on.
And not every buy-on is going to give you what you want.
Right.
Well, it's any time you get an opportunity in front of a national or somebody that's drawing, like whether it's a buy-on or you're just literally playing for free. We have a club locally that will put locals on,
Right.
and sometimes you sell tickets. Sometimes you're literally just playing and hoping you sell merch, and that's it.
Yeah.
So again, like what are you getting out of it in return? And we hate to use the word exposure, we really do, but sometimes that could be your benefit. If you're a young band, if you're a seasoned band, then you're already bringing stuff to the table. You're bringing something for the promoter to see, and you're bringing something for the touring band to see, that hopefully you've got a package with your brand.
Yep.
Yeah.
That adds value to the business. The issue is promoters and venues these days, it's all about money, and they need a guarantee. and the buy-in is a guarantee. If they know they have to hit $2,000 minimum to pay the touring band and pay the venue and pay all their fees, they've got to get it from somewhere, and a lot of times it's from ticket sales or guarantee buy-ons.
Yeah,
the
because
openers that are paying is helping to make sure that the touring band is getting what they were told they were going to get.
You are actually hoping that the band that you're opening for or buying on to with the package is going to have a pull as well. Because obviously if you're only doing it for the ticket sales or for the merch and doing it for the exposure, you're hoping that they can pull at least as well as you do when they come into your market.
Right. So but then that goes back to, does it make sense for your business? Like, we wouldn't probably open for a jazz funk fusion band.
No,
we wouldn't.
Even if they draw, it would just we
just wouldn't make
weird. So would that make sense for?
I would be fine with it as long as the music.
Would that make
I'll
sense
open
for our
most
brand?
Things.
It probably wouldn't make sense for our brand. I've seen bands play and open. There's a local county that has a free fair every year, and they have hard rock music, and they had like a alt pop country band come on, and everybody, short of booing them, really did not want them on this. And they were good musicians. They were good musicians.
Right.
Well,
But the problem is they didn't fit. So they probably bought onto that show, and that's how they got to play. But it didn't. To me, it didn't make sense as a business level.
But we've talked about this also off camera and off podcasts and everything like that before, that there are those exceptions that it's not always view it as if it's not my genre, the show doesn't make sense, because we've all played the cross-genre shows before that have actually garnered us new fans and exposure to things that otherwise in our normal demographics and our normal circles
I
we
agree.
would have gotten. And I'm not saying that
What I was saying was
it
it has to make
Ding,
sense.
ding, let's
Yes.
go.
So-
We're gonna
and I-
box this one
I
up.
get that
cross-genre
everything cycles back to
cross-genre
it
or
has to
not.
make sense.
Did it make sense for you to do that? You at that time you said this makes sense, even though
Well,
it's a
I think
cross-genre
some of
show.
those, at those times, the cross genres are one of those shows that you're getting into for the fun of it, depending on the venue, what it is. Are you actually marketing this as a way to push forward as a big money making, or are you just? Is this something that you just want to?
You're in those situations. You are hoping for cross pollination. You're hoping those other bands,
truly you
those
are.
fans that really are eclectic, like, hey, I like country and I like rock and I like metal. That will
Because
become
there are
your
the
fan.
fans out there that
But again,
do listen to everything.
I'm gonna restate. Does it make sense for your band? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, what do you consider fair? I mean, that's
I
really
didn't use the word. I never used the word fair.
Well, no. I didn't say you did. But like, what in a perfect situation for a buy-on?
What would make
There is-
sense?
there's-
What would make sense?
There, I mean, you at a minimum, if you're gonna, let's throw a dollar amount. If you're gonna sink $500 in the show to buy on, you better at least get $500 back.
Fair.
And it doesn't. That's the conversation is it doesn't have to be $500 that night. If I get back $300 in merch, but I turn around and book 2 or 3 more shows out of it, that's a win.
And that's a fantastic.
If I
way to think
network
about
with
it.
2 other bands and say, hey, I'm gonna go from Fort Wayne, we're gonna get a show in Chicago now.
Yep.
That's a win. So
Truly, yeah.
what makes sense for your business? People that go into business usually fail within the first year because it's all about sinking money into the business.
Yeah.
At some point, they want that ROI, they want that return on investment, but you don't always put the money in and get the money right back.
Well, and not only that, there are certain ventures, especially in the arts, where you really got to view what is a true return on investment, because a return on investment doesn't always mean financial return on investment.
Right. And if you are getting those extra shows.
Yeah.
Because those are going to branch out to more money being pulled in and more shows being lined up.
And again, do you feel that your cross-pollination from, even if you're playing all the same genre, will you gain the exposure? Will you gain the fan base that can help promote your... Because at the end of the day, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And so if you have a large fan base, let's face it, we know there are bands in the area that have a large fan base that don't necessarily shouldn't be on certain bills. I'm trying to tread very carefully and politely.
Right.
But they get that because they draw. And at the end of the day, when they draw, the venue makes money, the promoter makes money, the band makes money, regardless of how great their show is or how piss poor their show is.
Yeah, you're fine.
I didn't know if that was a legal
The
word.
reality, though, is the other side of that, though, is when you have bands that you do know, like, okay, we're not throwing any names out here on any of this, but I will say that we were given the potential of an opportunity to wrap up our tour last year with certain things, and we had certain people that were heavily pushing for us to be able to be on this show. And we knew that we were going to be able to still move units even though we weren't in town. We knew we were going to be able to move tickets. We knew we were going to have a draw for that show. And the promoter knew, the venue knew, but the actual talent buyer, well, I don't even know if it would be the talent buyer or if it's just a touring manager for the actual big band that was actually coming through, decided that we still theoretically weren't going to cover their expenses, even if we possibly could have. They didn't want to even take the chance, and that's another thing that is part of the buy-on thing. And like I was stating, in a perfect world earlier, that's what you're hoping for and everything like that. But even when everything lines up, that you know that you have it lined up, that you're going to be able to cover all the overheads that this venue wants or this band wants or whatever, that still doesn't mean that you're even going to get those opportunities, because what ended up happening to us, we had everybody on our side of the fence here in Indiana pushing heavily and trying their best to get us on that.
I know that show because I started the minute we had even dropped an inkling that we could try for that show. I was posting and hinting that we had an opportunity and trying a social media grassroots push. And within like a week, I could have sold us like 20 tickets personally.
Yeah.
And
I already had at least like 10 moved on that.
I will tell you, speaking of the venue,
I had a few that I could have pushed myself. And
but
that was even without.
And that's not a buy-on, so we are getting away from that a little bit.
But where that dials into the buy-on thing, though, is we got dropped.
If we could have bought on.
Well, no, I mean, yes, but this is where it ties into the buy-on. The venue wanted us, the promoter wanted us, but the band / the touring manager opted not to because they didn't want to take the gamble on us, and they took a buy-on from another band that was at a lower tier than them, that was also in mid-tour, that needed some pickup dates, and they were willing to buy on to that mini tour instead of bringing us on instead.
And I've seen that happen at one of our local clubs where there was a regional / local band that was supposed to open. There's a tour coming through, and they were on, and I personally was excited because I support local as well. So I'm there ready to watch this opening band, and there was as you said, there was a touring band coming through from New York that dropped $2,000 to open for the show, and then so the local band didn't get to because they weren't a buy-on, and they didn't have to do ticket sales, so they had no financial gain into this.
Yep.
So they were just bought out basically.
Wow.
So the touring band got to buy on and got to play.
And in essence, it's kind of, we didn't end up getting it all the way down the road to where everybody knew that we were attached to the show or anything like that. But in essence, behind the curtain, that's kind of what ended up happening to us.
Yeah.
We were offered a show by certain aspects of the show, and then were completely pulled away from it because a buy-on was offered as an option. And, well, I get it from a financial point in certain respects, but at the same time, when you have mid-size venues, because I'm not going to say it's even like mid-size promoters or anything like that or talent buyers, but mid-size venues and everything like that, the big thing for a lot of them is that their crowd and their fan base to that venue is usually going to be, I get to go see an intimate show with a big band, and usually I can also guarantee that I'm going to see some local guys that I probably either know or know adjacently. And it's going to end up making it even more fun because then I'm usually able to feel like I can go interact with those people that are local after the show, and it's not going to be intimidating or awkward for me to just go up and shoot the shit with them and have a beer.
Now, sidestepping only slightly, even with a buy-on, how much pressure should a promoter, in your opinion, actually still be applying? Because, I mean, they're a promoter, they're promoting the show. But at least with experience that I've seen, when you buy on, all the pressure seems to be on the bands to obviously promote and push.
And that
the promoter's the one that set up the show.
No, and I agree that I'm not going to say this is obviously all of them, because it's just like all bands and like all venues all over the country, there's different variants of quality that you're going to get in every market, and even in the same market with,
and that it really does fall back down onto the band heavily
well-
because you got to sell your brand.
Yeah, again, is it worth it for your business? If you are going into this knowing the promoter is not going to do his job and they're just there to collect your check because you're giving them the money, is that still worth it for you? Can you do that on your own, or do you need the promoter to do it?
Well, that's actually kind
So-
of like,
so that's-
like investigating it.
Yeah,
and
so that's, I
find out
mean,
about the promoter.
is that worth your investment, knowing that I'm going to go into the show with XYZ national headliner, I'm expecting to move this much merch or this much networking or whatever you're trying to get, whatever your return is, knowing the promoter is not going to do dick.
Right. I mean, we've all dealt with great promoters, and we've dealt with.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's the other
Yeah.
thing. So, like, if you're going into it knowing you're buying on with confidence that the promoter is going to help you, to me that is a good investment because
Yes.
you've got somebody in your corner that's not just taking your money,
Yes.
but they're also helping support your business and your brand and your image.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and we've talked about this also off before, where in regards to that, though, yes, you need to make sure that everything makes sense for your business, but there are times where you can have done your due diligence and you can hope that you've
Yeah.
researched enough and this is going to be a worthwhile promoter, this is going to be a worthwhile show, this is going to be a worthwhile venture for my business. But then you still end up upside down, bent over,
Oh, yeah.
and screwed at the end of the whole
Sometimes
thing.
it's still just a crapshoot.
Yeah.
It just is.
There's a lot of variables there, really is.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part that this is a big one that is been happening a lot more lately. It's been a thing for years. We've dealt with it before at other shows and everything like that, is the merch draw. And unfortunately, there's only so much knowledge you can have if the venue you're going to be playing is going to be expecting to a percentage of your merch if you've never experienced that market before.
Yeah.
Where if you walk into that market fresh, brand new, you've talked, to as many people as you could, including the promoter that may have booked you or the other bands that you're playing with, maybe one of the locals and everything, like just trying to get the feedback of, hey, is this a good venue? What should I expect? Is there a built-in crowd? Blah, 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 blah. You're trying to get all of this info. Sometimes, especially if you're a newer band, and that's something I really want to try to push forward for a lot of newer bands that are trying to get out there into new markets and get their reach going. Make sure that if you're going into a decent sized venue, even venues that you don't think are big enough to actually be doing something like that, it does not hurt to ask either the promoter, the talent buyer, one of the other bands from that area, is there a merch cut expected out of it and everything like that, just so that way you're not caught off guard and in an awkward situation then at the end of the night where you're in a fight with somebody to try to retain your money on product that you actually manufactured. Because if unfortunately it's a potential where you walked in on a buy-on and you just happen to be lumped in on that contract.
Yeah, see, I'm a firm, at least for me, if you have to buy on to a show and you're already throwing your own money, them taking a cut of merch, it's kind of like,
It's just sometimes it might be the nature of the beast. What he was saying was,
It's rough-
if you're
it's
buying
rough to
on,
justify.
if you're buying on something that a
It
tour pack
is.
has already had set up and it was unbeknownst to you, you've already got that decision made. You're already sunk into it. But you mentioned something about new bands and talking about buy-ons, and a lot of bands that are new, like you say buy-on, and bands are like, "Ooh, don't pay to play, don't do that." And in the rock world and the rock music, it's not really a common thing. So, I mean, coming from our world, it's not. But I actually had some friends do hip hop and stuff in the area, and that is a very normal thing for hip hop.
yeah,
It's-
I
it's-
To
That's
buy
kind
on
of the
and-
way of the walk
But
with
not
them.
only to buy on, but like they buy on for like 15 minutes or
Yeah.
20 minutes, and
they'll
that's
buy
it.
on for a 15-minute just
But
spot.
the concept of it is, so again, as your business, as your brand, if you're a newer band or newer artist or whatever,
Yeah.
and you're buying on, I ran into a situation when I got the opportunity to open for my first national. It was not a buy on, but the comments were like, "Are you getting paid? Are you selling tickets?" Like, I was grilled by a lot of seasoned musicians in our area about what was I getting out of it, and I was like, I was so happy. I'm going to open for
A big
this
band.
national band.
You know what I'm getting out of it? I'm
And
getting to play in front of
I
them.
get to play in front of 800 people, which was pretty big at the time for us.
Yeah.
And I'm like so excited.
And I mean, for a
but
lot
they,
of-
they talked down to me for a minute, but then I started thinking, if I say no to this opportunity that I think, and it turned out to be a really good opportunity, someone else will say yes. Someone else will come up with the buy on. Someone else will be able to do. The show will go on whether you say yes or no.
Right.
So they're not hurting for talent. They're not hurting for people to fill those shoes. So the question comes back to, is a buy on worth it to your brand?
Exactly.
And what will you get in that return? Sometimes you say no. Sometimes you say yes. Sometimes you just think about it. I mean,
It's just the one and only big thing, because again, a buy-on ultimately is only going to make sense to you and you alone, because I can't tell you if that buy-on is going to make sense for your brand, comparison to me being able to know if it's going to make sense for my brand. But I can wholeheartedly say with every fiber of my being, if you're a newer band or even a veteran band that's doing it for the first time, if you have an opportunity for a buy-on for a package that already has contracts attached to it, and you're just going to be lumped into said contract because you bought into the package, make sure you're finding out all the nuances. Is there a merch cut that's going to be expected out of you at every venue or only certain venues? Is it a percentage that you're going to be deeming acceptable? Because that might end up being the thing that determines, no, this, yeah, there's a financial upfront for it, but then there's a reoccurring financial that I'm going to have to, throw out there every time that we have a tour stop then. And that's not going to make any financial sense. And I mean, if you got enough pull, or you got enough, you think you got the most amazing merch that no matter what you do, you're going to be almost selling out every night. And even if you have to fork over 25% off of whatever you did, you're still making money. Good on you. I can tell you, after all of these years, we've moved more than a few pieces of merch over all these years. We still have never moved enough merch for me to feel like 25% cut off of our merch under most of our shows would ever make sense.
So back to your question about promoters, and I don't want to keep detracting that way. So when it comes to buy-ons, there are a lot of things, and obviously watching the clock here too, there are a lot of things to consider for your band and your brand. What are you getting out of it in terms of, and I'm going to use the word exposure, but what exposure are you getting out of it? What's the promoter doing to help you? What's the venue doing to help you? Your name and your brand. Like, are they sharing your material? Are they including you in their marketing? Or is the poster just have the touring band and that's it? The local club here has done a really good job of sharing all the events, tagging all the bands.
Yes.
They don't really share any videos or anything, but when they share the event, they make sure they tag all the bands that are in it. So to me, as a venue, that's a step up. That's a level up.
For the promoter that built the event to take the time to include all the bands that are involved.
They should, because if you're buying on, you're giving them upfront money.
Well, there's a lot of shoulds,
all you're doing with the guaranteed money is putting your name on that stage.
Yeah.
That's it. They don't have to. They don't have to do anything else outside of let you play.
Unless you have a contract. And being realistic, if you're doing the buy-on, most of the time, most promoters that are looking for $1,000 plus buy-on for bands, they're really not interested in if you're going to get anything other than a slot. They're interested in making sure that they got their overhead covered.
$1,000 in their hand. Do you have 20 minutes of music or 30 minutes of music or whatever they're asking?
Yep.
And that's it. They're not going to do. So my point was, what are your considerations? We talked about merch cut. We talk about promoter exposure. We talk about venue exposure. We've talked about networking. Like, what is the value of networking for you?
Oh, for me, I love being able to network. And
being able to come up with a show trade. Being able to make connections with other people in the venue that can help you return to the venue without a buy-on.
The networking that we were able to pull on our last tour was just an amazing experience of dealing with these other bands that we've never played with before that are out of state, and knowing that we're doing multiple shows with them and networking with them,
and we played with a lot of good bands,
possible future connections. And it's like, hey, if you ever come in here, we're gonna hook you up. If we're coming your way, hey, what do you say? We'll get together again.
And to that networking, actually, in regards to the tour, there was an even cooler part that actually happened with that. We played with one of the bands at a different show here in town months and months and months prior to playing with them again while we were in West Virginia. And
Yeah.
prior to the show, it was a, oh crap, dude, how are you doing type thing. And we had a cool connecting bonding moment
Right.
that only happened because of networking that happened at a show almost a year prior because of just hanging out after the set
Yeah, we were
and shooting
informed
the
about
crap with them.
sheets.
Yeah.
Oh,
But yeah, that moment alone though
You remember
was
sheets.
awesome.
I was just thinking about the pillow flip when you said sheets.
So
I was thinking about bedroom.
we will have to do an episode
Get your mind out
here
of the gutter,
soon
sir.
that we talk about some of the antics
Okay, we're
that
gonna,
happened.
we're gonna get back to some goofy topics.
Yeah,
then?
some of
Okay.
the antics that actually happened on the tour. We
Oh,
can't,
fuck.
in good faith, actually share everything that
We
happened.
can't actually share on actually controller.
Yeah, we can't actually share on actually Controller because here's the thing: some of it's not okay to
To be
share.
fair, you should
To
just
be
come to a
fair.
show and chat us up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
but that I think should wrap it up. Unless anybody else has any real
No,
input
no,
on
no.
this topic, pretty much make sure it makes sense for you.
Yeah, if you find the value in it, go for it. If you can do it, do it.
A lot of people will see it negative, and that's the thing. Like, in the music world in general, it takes all sorts to work. Depends on the market, depends on the genre, depends on the venue. There's a lot of variances, and it's not a negative thing if it makes sense to your brand.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily do it yet myself, as you said.
Yep.
Like, what kind of benefits outside of financial? What kind of benefits are you getting out of it? You know, if I was a hip hop artist, hell yeah, I probably would, because that's pretty much the nature of
That's the way of the walk.
nature of the beast. Like, but I would still be selective about which shows I buy
Which one
onto,
I'm buying on,
because I
yeah.
want to make sure at that point it is almost purely financial. Like, I'm gonna, what's the most bang for my buck at that point? So
Yep.
you've got to think about your genre. A lot of our people are probably our rock and metal heads, but
Yep.
it's definitely a thing. It does depend on the venue. What is the return on investment for your brand and your business? And really, it's a twofold. I had a conversation with the venue that I played at last night. You know, as a business, I want to make sure you do well. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to buy on just to get, whip it out and say, look what I can do.
Yeah, and that's the other
I want to
thing.
make sure
I
that,
wanna
like,
make sure the venue's
I
doing
want to
well.
come back. I want to
I was
leave
going
a
to
good
say, because
impression.
if you don't make sure the venue's happy, you're not getting a return.
No.
And it's and at that point is like they're collecting their check from you.
Mm-hmm.
You get your 20-30 minute slot and they're done with you. I want to make sure that I'm going to take it a step further as a business, take it a step further and connect with that venue and be like, "Hey, think of us when you have future shows. Remember us. We've done everything professional. Financially we supported you. We brought fans or whatever they're looking for from
Yep.
you.
Right.
And what am I getting in return?" And that's part of my return. I want to make sure I have an open opportunity to
That's
come back.
actually a really good return.
So needless to say, bands are dirty, dirty hussies.
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes.
So just to throw it out there to anybody that is listening, if you are interested in certain topics you would like us to talk about, you can hit us up. You can message us directly, Facebook, or you can comment.
Or this is always, every episode's always up on YouTube.
Yep.
So go ahead and leave it in the comment section
Yeah,
below.
so anything
Any interested topics for us, because we have more than enough things we'd love to talk about, but we're also more interested in talking about things you want to hear.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that's all fair. This way you guys keep coming back, and I hope you guys
Yeah.
have enjoyed listening to us tonight. Yeah.
well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And we will catch you next week.
Later.
Later.
All the love.
Thank you for listening to Actually Controller. If you liked what you heard, please consider following us on all our socials. You can easily find us on all the different platforms by going to linktree/controller33 or scan the QR code if you are watching the video version of this episode. Thank you.